Thank you, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of our Last 30, our podcast, our weekly podcast. We have a new guest. Excited we met him briefly, honestly, and excited to share his experience with you. And so we'll start off as we normally do with, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little about yourself.
My name's Ray Jackson. Relatively boring story altogether. I grew up in Garland for the most part. Once I was about 10 or 12, we stayed in Pleasant Grove before that. But most of what I remember was in Garland. Grew up being kind of a punk kid. I was a pretty good kid up until, 8th, 9th grade, and then started smoking weed, started doing all the nonsense, and everything kind of went a little bit of a different path that a lot of people know these days after that. And got hooked on drugs. I was hooked on pills for 10 years plus, among other things, throughout a shorter period of time. But then somewhere around 25, finally sobered up and left the Dallas area. So it was the only way I could not continue finding more plugs. And shortly after that, I started living with my brother by bond, not by blood, and his name is Trevor. And we first stayed in Oklahoma City because he was a Submariner, as I'd mentioned, and he was stationed there for a little while. Went up to Washington whenever he got another sea posting, and that is where he passed away in 2020. And after that, everything kind of went back downhill. I ended up getting some nerve damage because I wouldn't leave my house. I was very much a shut-in. But from that did come more of a inward look at myself. Things changed a lot from there. And shoot, after I started really focusing on myself and personal acceptance and happiness and forgiving both myself and everyone and everything that had happened in my past, everything kind of went a lot better of a direction after that. It was about 2 years ago now that we moved back to Texas and have kind of just been doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that since then. I got certified to be a personal trainer, and so that's been what I've been enjoying the most. But other little side gigs here and there and whatnot. So life takes you crazy places.
Yeah, you talked about how sometimes you have to leave wherever that town is, right? And it's not because any city has more or less than anything else. It's just all the people you know. And you're right. Of all your plugs are here in this small town or large town. If you stay there, you're going to run into them. You're going to run into people you might owe, people who owe you and want to take care of you. It's difficult, man. Sometimes you just got to get out.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that.
Oh,
I can appreciate.
We've all done that before.
Different points in our life, just need to
get away for a little bit.
Yeah. You know, I'm relatively new, if you will, to this area. When I met people who would talk about Pleasant Grove, I was like, that sounds like a beautiful place.
At one point in time, it was.
It had to have been, right? Because of the name. Turns out it's a little bit on the tougher side of life.
Not as Pleasant Grove.
It's not as pleasant or grovey these days, but I think things are turning around. I think things have settled down there for the most part. Seems like maybe.
Yeah, I got a buddy of mine that actually he just bought a house out there. Went from one side of it where it's not so good to the newer, better side of it. So I think it's moving up, but I do also think that the standard of moving up is a little bit low these days, just because you're never all that far away from the downtown issues, even when you're not downtown these days.
Yeah. Pleasant Grove was not far at all from all of that.
Nope.
Yeah, he's closer. He's from the Dallas area, so he knows the area more. For me, I'm still learning a lot about this area, but you know, you talked about your brother and him passing away in 2020. You said he was in the military.
He was in the Navy.
In the Navy. And he talked about how that impacted you, his loss. You said you kind of ended up revisiting some of the tougher parts of your choices and whatnot.
Yeah, he and I had a lot of history. When we were in high school, one of my brothers by blood had been friends with him, and so I knew him just through people. But he went away to the military at 18, and by 18, my daughter was on the way, and so we were kind of each going our separate ways. Didn't know too much about one another. But when he came back into town a couple of years later, there was nobody else who was available to hang out with him. Him and I kind of bonded for an entire weekend, and after that, we were just inseparable because of a bunch of shit that happened that week throughout his leave that he had that time. And so after that, I started kind of shifting my work or my sleep schedule around a little bit because he was in Guam. And so that way I could get up at like 2 o'clock in the morning and hang out with him for his getting off work because it helped him feel connected, helped me feel connected. At that point, a lot of my friends were either the bad plugs I had referred to or otherwise in ways that I didn't really need to interact with them. And so him and I bonded real fast from there. When I started getting off of drugs, he was coming back through California on his way to Oklahoma and gotten married. And his wife was in a whole issue where she was going to get out of the Navy because of the marriage, but they wouldn't watch her kids. So I took a bus out to California for a couple of months, watched her kids, helped them pack up the house. And then whenever she was finally out, her papers were done, we all packed up, drove her to Oklahoma. And then about a year later is when I ended up moving down there with him because she divorced him. Along with other stuff from our own end where the job I was doing at the time wasn't really working out, kind of this, that, or the other. But from then on, we lived together for, oh my goodness, because that was 2000. I don't know. I was like 26-ish when that happened, so that'd be 2016 area.
Mm-hmm.
And we had lived together past, oh my gosh, it would have had to have been earlier than that. But regardless, the timeline aside.
No one will.
Yeah.
No
Like,
I
said 2016.
it was January. Actually, it was February, and I want to talk to human resources about this. You know.
But at that point in time, me and my girlfriend moved out, lived with him, and he knew he would be going West Coast. And so we would move out there with him. And as we lived together, we just bonded more and more. And it got to the point where when he was when he was deployed, I'd take care of his stuff, clean up his room, do his shit just so that he could come home, enjoy his life, take care of himself. He was off and on with relationships and whatnot, but he had an inkling for terrible women, as so many of us do,
as we all do.
And so,
what? Who said that?
It's always those ones that get under your skin, though, and they just stay there.
It's a complicated issue, man.
It really is, isn't it? Though,
if you've ever dated anyone or whatever situation. Right now, you're probably pausing and you just need a moment like,
yeah, that was our.
What have we done?
That was our.
What's going on here? And and they can say the same thing about us,
100%.
Right? Like
we're horrible.
We're terrible.
Oh man.
At least they're beautiful.
But so that was that was a lot of his big struggle though, was women, because he was coming up on 30 and he hadn't had any long relationship that really come to fruition in the manner he had hoped for. He himself was changing and growing because a lot of people, when they come up to 30, that's your first major benchmark of adult.
Right. That's right.
Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that. I'm 2 years away from that.
Like 21 was fun, but did you wait until you were 21 to start drinking? So it wasn't really a milestone as much as
no, it really
wasn't. When you come to 30, there is a human thing in you that says things are changing.
Yeah.
And so he was struggling with a lot of that, a lot of depression, and as I'm sure you know, in the military, talking about your depression is for most people an absolute no-go zone. You will lose your not your certifications, but your classifications. You will lose anything you're allowed to do. Chance of promotions, absolutely. People look at you different because they're all like, "Well, I do too," and I didn't say anything because it's a community thing. And so he had help. There, no saying that he was put out by his people or anything. He had his help. He did his thing. And unfortunately, he drank. And that was really got to him. He loved his motorcycle. And so we all know how that can end. He was kind of one of my major stepping stones to getting out of my box of social anxiety, this, that, or the other. And he's aware of this. We chatted about it. He helped take me out to places I didn't normally go, bar crawls in Seattle, things of this nature. And so when he passed away, I regressed in that manner quite a bit. And even as a kid, even when I started doing drugs, one of my favorite things to do was to sit in my room and play Xbox, Elder Scrolls, things of this nature. And so I just immediately jumped right back into that because he and I had bonded a lot over the original Destiny video game. And Destiny 2 was coming out, or not coming out, but coming out with a new expansion rather at the time. And so I just dove into that and disappeared for like 16 hours out of the day. And eventually I started to get pain in my knee, went to a doctor, got nerve damage, finally started with that, going back to the gym, learning how to eat properly, learning what a calorie was. I started to get Medicaid, which I was always against, government aid, just on principle. But at that point, I was like, okay, there's a time and place. I have arrived there. And so up in Washington, I got the healthcare I needed. Went to go see psychiatrists, went to go see physical therapists, got back into the gym, educated myself on YouTube. Renaissance Periodization was a channel that was just huge for me. And just kind of slowly started moving towards a better understanding of life. Eventually, that did incorporate religion into it, and we touch base on that, but that is an extensive conversation in and of itself. And so a lot of what it did was after I had regressed back to the point of my worst, I realized that what many people realize in these situations, that is the last thing that he would have wanted. That there was a weird scenario I kept going through in my mind that I was like, if Trevor had been given the opportunity to one of those flash in the last second of your life, you can either come back and this happens, or you can die and this happens. I know that as myself, I'm confident in, he would have chosen not to keep living if he thought that what the outcomes would be better without him. Either be it by motivation, by this, that, or the other. And so that kind of stuck with me. And so in an instance like that, or anything like that, I would know that he would want the best for me, and he would want me to gain something positive from him not being there anymore. And that whole thought concept is what drove me to doing better. And every time that I thought about that and I kept trying to do stuff that I didn't necessarily feel comfortable or confident doing, I thought about that and felt he was there with me, helping me along. I'm a big supporter of spiritual energy, things of this nature. And they're both extrinsic and intrinsic. And so I tried to motivate myself to find the goodness from what was good or from what was bad. And again, I just feel confident that if any of that's true, that his energy did help me then move forward. Sometimes it was things that were thought experiments, just getting better about being nicer, calmer, more understanding. A lot of it was focused on that, on being understanding of others' struggles.
Yeah. And isn't it also part of acknowledging our own privilege of being able to be alive? Those who have passed, your brother Trevor, there's a certain privilege that says, if I shit it away, how disrespectful is that to his memory, to his legacy, right? So, like, there's a certain level of, no, man, I'm gonna set this up a different kind of level. For, I mean, ultimately, it's for you,
Yeah.
and the people around you, and people you love. It's for us, right? But it is in honor of and in memory of those who've transitioned.
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful piece.
But I would say that overall, that the most epic moment of my life, did help for the better in the long run, regardless of how sad the situation continues to make me. Because coincidentally enough, today is his birthday. It's July 26th. Trevor David Sowers, for those of you out here who may know him. But it's nice to talk about him today because
Beautiful.
He would have been 34 this year. And I'm fully confident that he, as a person, regardless of his life or his death, the entirety of it and what he did was able to help turn me into what I am today. And I'm a much better person than I was when he and I really started to bond and really started to do exactly that and try to help each other be better people.
Yeah.
We didn't really know how we were doing it at the time. And I mean, it's not something we didn't talk about. We did mention that we would like each of us to address certain things about ourselves that we knew we didn't like, especially through teenagehood, where we had all done some dumb stuff. And so we knew what we wanted to help with, but we didn't know how to help with that. We ourselves were young and ignorant. And honestly, neither of us were terribly honest with ourselves at that point in time.
But I think it's pretty impressive that you had an opportunity to talk about that. And I don't know that that's a narrative that gets out there enough about men, young men, middle-aged men, whatever, being introspective and retrospective and talking about like to each other, like, man, I'd like to change this, or I wish you would change this. Like that's not a narrative out there, man. And so that's cool to hear that you guys were already thinking that way, challenging each other, getting each other better.
Yeah, because he and I were both, I think, the type of person that is all too common these days, that inside here, they're good people. But it may be hidden behind decades of what's the world? A bunch of nonsense, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but always distracting. Always preventing you from being that childlike dreamer you were. And the essence of that childlike dreamer is a healthy relationship with your spirituality, with your own inner energy. And everyone's just kind of lost that. Not literally everyone, of course, hyperbole aside, but most people growing up have lost their connection with their spirituality. Even the churchgoers, even the hippies, devout Christians here in the South, it just, everything that's being taught is slightly askew from actual morality, actually being good to one another. And so many of these boys and men are growing up as what inside is a very good person. And they don't know how to express that. They only know how to express malice, anger, frustration. They see their own parents say, hey, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this, and then treat their friends exactly in those same ways that they say you shouldn't be treated. But their perspective is that that's a good person. That person who is raising me is a good person. And so, okay, you say these things, but you don't really do them. It's just a weird duality, two-faced perspective, whatever you want to call it. There's so many young men and women that are good inside under social media outside. I mean, I know it's not just social media, it's also school. School's a dangerous place to be for anyone these days. Kids are harsh. But I think most kids really are at a breaking point of understanding that they themselves are good inside, and a lot of what is out there on the internet and on social media sites that isn't directly learning is unnecessary. Like, don't get me wrong, I love this, and this whole podcast I think is learning, because I think that you are helping people learn the part of spirituality and what many would call opening the mind's eye that is very, very critical right now, especially in the modern political and economic landscape. It's rough. But I think that a lot of the fluff and a lot of the clout chasing that the younger generation is identifying it and they're rebelling against it to some degree or another. I wonder if they're going to outpace AI, because AI loves the worst of things.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so, I don't know. Kids are good, though. Kids are good until they're ruined. That's always my opinion. There are exceptions. Outliers happen. There are kids that are born with disorders or this, that, or the other that prevent that from happening. But 99.9999% of the time, kids are good.
We met. We went on a hiking trip a couple weeks back, and we were in. I don't know what state we're in, but we were walking up this just beautiful. We left it certainly before sunrise. The whole idea was while walking down the 6 mile trail for the sunrise and then for us to be at our destination. And we met this family, this couple there, and they were like, "Those are your kids?" But yeah, those are my kids, man. They said, "What's the secret, man? They're such great kids. How did you get them out here? 4 or 5 in the morning is when you left." I said, and I wanted to say, parenting. What do you mean? And I said, "Oh, they're just great kids and they've always been." And it's true. They are wonderful children and they've always been. But also, it takes a level of adulting to say, tell me, let's write down what and they envisioned a vacation to how these pieces. And we had to come through. Mm-hmm. I very easily could have slept through that. The alarm would. I mean, get up early, but if there was an alarm, I get up, man, 4 o'clock, 4:30, yeah. But if I needed that, I very easily could have just said.
Well, and I think that touches on one of the largest parenting issues that's been around for a very long time, and that is the catching of flies with honey rather than with vinegar. I know that many people from my generation, myself included, feel as though they were taught by fear of punishment, not by a reward system. Your reward was you don't get hit, you don't get smacked, you don't get to stand in a corner for hours or on end or whatever else. Your reward was less fear. And that's not a good reward system. What is a good reward system is rewards. Right. Now then, I think that on the few occasions where that is done, it's still done wrong because it's all, thanks Edward Bernays, candy at the end of the aisle, at the end of the register. It's all just manipulative nonsense. Yeah. Where the grocery store is rewarding your child. You're not. You think you are, but you are at the whim of the people that design it. Not because you don't know. You can know all you want. Your kid doesn't. Your kid does not know what's going on, and they do not have the mental capacity to walk through a grocery store and not be assaulted with marketing. Absolutely. I don't think the grocery store is a healthy place for a child to be quite frank. It is filled with so much psychological nonsense that children should not be there. They see the happiness of bad food and the boring blandness of good food, and that is imprinted into them for years. They go see all the fun Lucky Charms style colors for the stuff they should not be eating, and they see gross yellow nonsense chicken, which is one of the healthiest things that you can go in there and get.
And not only that, the intentionality of where it's placed. Like you're talking about from about the 4 foot down, it's colorful, it's exciting, perfect for their eyes to say, "Mom, Dad, can I get this?" Mm-hmm. Our stuff is up here. Well, I still get
you're still over here.
You still get the good stuff. I get it. That's why I'm a fruity pebbles kind of guy. I never got to that.
The raisin bread are top.
Raisin bread missed me, man. No, but it's true. Like we're doing that, and we let them do that to our children, and it takes adults to interrupt and interfere that process, as we would a bully or anyone else.
But who wants to be the weird guy that's like, "No, I don't take my kids to the grocery store"?
Yeah, right.
Like, if you said that, like, "Oh no, you got your kid." It's like, no, my kids don't walk in a grocery store. You're the weird one, and it's like, absolutely. I think it could be one of the most psychologically helpful things for kids, though, is they don't go to the place where there's not 1, 2, 3. There are dozens and dozens on each aisle options for them to choose to be unhealthy. It's weird, but the whole world's kind of like that right now. It is unsafe for children to be anywhere if you want to protect their mind. because everything has been taken over by that same form of marketing and advertising and glam. It's all about getting the kids thinking a certain way, and then you win.
Yeah.
Psychological warfare is not fought on adults. Adults think they're fighting back against it, but it's fought on children. It's fought by how do these children see responding to things like this? Mm-hmm. If you're aware that there's subliminal messaging going on, like we heard tell of when we were growing up, not a lot, but also most of us had parents that were to some degree or another convinced it could happen. Mm-hmm. Well, that was happening all the time because they were convinced it could happen and did nothing against it. That's it's right. The same with things even so basic as the reward system at a grocery store. If you take them to a grocery store, they determine the reward system. Whereas if you help your child accomplish something and get rewarded at the end of it with a planned trip for them, by them, that's a whole different kind of mindset that will grow within that child. And eventually, again, it's just like whenever all these kids are going to the grocery store being rewarded that way, you eat unhealthily. I did the same thing. And all you do is you go to the grocery store and get caught up in a subconscious thought process of how you're shopping. You can do the same thing with hiking, with walks. Like for me, I get my cardio through Pokemon Go. I play Pokemon Go, I walk around, I get lots of steps, and I get my cardio. Yeah. It's a reward system, and it's an artificial one, and I'm not a huge fan of that concept, but
it got people moving around.
They really did.
That got people moving around like nothing else had.
Yeah,
that's
walking
crazy.
on the highways. Yeah, oh yeah, people were crazy with it, but
yeah,
they got them moving. They got them moving.
No, but we were in Oklahoma City actually with Trevor. We just moved down there when Pokemon Go originally came out. That's a large portion of why it continues to drive me is because we did that together. Trevor, myself, and Becca. The first 6 months it came out, just running around playing Pokemon Go, and it kind of dropped off. But after he passed away, it was a way to get me out and about, get me some steps. It was when I learned that more or less cardio is cardio. You don't have to run, you don't have to row, you don't have to do anything specific. If you do anything, including just walking, you're pretty much good.
Yeah,
there's more nuance to it for sure, but you do the one you can do. You don't do the one that you won't do. So,
and on the parenting perspective, you're listening in. Any kind of engagement, let your children lead that conversation, and then you can modify and then change the parameters based on safety and finances and budgets and stuff like that. But
oh yeah, I'm not trying to tell anyone how to raise their kids.
Yeah, no, we're not telling you.
This is very much a thought experiment type situation. It's a dangerous place, and we've been seeing a lot of things by Edward Bernays or about Edward Bernays rather, and Freud, and just what the American marketing system has done. Not exclusively American. We just have the capitalism behind it to make it big, but all of it's manipulative.
It is, man. Well, on our, for us as families, we don't judge anyone for how they do it, but we embrace the outdoors. We do as much camping and hiking and walking as possible, and it allows for you to explore different eating options and drinking and sleeping and lodging and all those things, man, that people love.
Yeah, I only recently got back into camping.
I love it, man, mm-hmm. and we're pretty hardcore about it. We love it, and it just allows for you families to disconnect from if you have young people who are attached to their iPads and iPhones and all this social media content stuff. You can move away from all that, and that's the beauty of the great outdoors. Actually, my children's school received this grant from Texas Parks and Wildlife, and it was a beautiful grant. And I'm talking about good money. And it took 30 or 40 kids out to Palo Duro to West Canyon, Texas, and they were there for 4 or 5 days, all expenses, and getting young children who probably otherwise would never go camping to explore, and getting their parents excited about that as well. And hopefully your community has those. And if you're not aware of it, look up Texas Parks and Wildlife and see if that grant is something that your schools can apply for. It's pretty life changing.
I've been going to quite a few Arkansas parks recently.
Beautiful. Arkansas is beautiful.
It absolutely
Good
is.
night. It is beautiful.
I hadn't spent too much time. We used to drive through it on our way up to Kentucky when I was a kid, but I hadn't spent too much time. It's really nice.
Nice, man. I mean, like I say the same thing about East Texas, right? So I live in East Texas, and it's just, so if you're into trees and nature, like it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And Arkansas has all of that and still affordable. So if you want to invest in land, you can jump in there. So mindful of our podcast, Caesar and I came up with a concept for us to just kind of sit back and talk. And we had mini lunches and drinks, lots of drinks, lots of drinks, and we found out that it was hugely beneficial. It's therapeutic for us. Now we're not advocating drinking or anything like that, but for us, a drink or two hit the spot.
Drink responsibly. There you go.
Yeah,
there's the message.
Yeah, if you're old enough and it's not something that you struggle with as an addiction, we still have to keep it in check. And I'll say that alcohol is a drug, and we have to be mindful of that. But for us, there was just a couple times where we were at a location where we knew we weren't going to be driving. We buy a small bottle for him, large bottle for me. In other words, like I'm looking at this and it looks large, and he's like, "This is a small bottle." But it is. That's a little guy joke. The point is,
you got quite a bit of those.
Yeah, we had some great time just to kind of relax a little bit and just kind of talk. And in that was born the concept, man, what if we only had 30 days to live? How would we live our life differently? Would we do things differently? And so we wanted to propose that to you. If a doctor told you, and it's just a scenario, of course, just for the next 30 minutes, if you were given a scenario that you only have 30 days to live, what would that look like for you? Who do you tell, and how do you respond initially?
And I have been thinking about this since I found out I was coming on here. It's something that everyone thinks about from time to time, here or there.
Yeah.
I think that there are two lines of thought, one of which is just that most people are not spiritually healthy enough to answer that question, because no matter what they do, it will not be what they think it's going to be. The other concept is you need to find your favorite people, and then you need to take them out to the woods, spend your last 30 days away from electronics, away from social media, away from everything, and make their last 30 days with you important. Now, that can have many different ways for many different people. And again, I think that still ties to the first one, where I don't think most people are spiritually healthy enough to be able to do that to any real positive result. If you're happy enough with yourself and you're understanding and forgiving of all those that have wronged you in your past to a great degree, then yes, you could live whatever last 30 days you like and find real enjoyment from it. And then you're dead. So the important thing might be to leave good memories with those that are the most important for you now when you're alive.
That's right.
And that's going to be a weird, hard, selfless thing to do when you're on your way out. But if there were a thing to do for the sake of yourself and others, it would be that. That being said, we're in 2024. I think that if you have 30 days to live, you need to make sure that you make it to 60 days, and then 90 days, and then 120 days. Because we may at any point in time turn a corner to where that is cured. Whatever ailment you have, whatever issue you're encountering, may well be but months away from being solved altogether.
And also, something can happen to us today. And you hear all these stories where the guy said he was going to live forever, or thought he lived like he was going to live forever, and he's no longer here, or he's in a different state, whether that's physical, mental, spiritual. And And it's worth being mindful. Like, we don't know what tomorrow brings.
Yeah.
But it's also a good little cue to say, if I only had 30 days, would I do anything different? Would I, you've mentioned it several times. I wrote it down. You talk about pretty powerful word, forgiveness. And if in those 30 days, if you're not, if you leave and you haven't forgiven others, I don't know if you're going to rest in peace, man.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I don't know if I could rest in peace if I left without forgiving and being forgiven. Do you feel the same way about anything?
Absolutely. I think that what the Bible tries to tell people about the afterlife is ostensibly that if you live your life, do your best, and get your brain in the right spot, truly embrace forgiveness. One of the key tenets that is described and talked about in the Bible is forgiveness. I think that if you can do that, then your consciousness gets to live, experience, reside within a realm of optimism that you yourself have created. And that if you die in a moment that your mindset is overwhelmingly bad and you've not achieved forgiveness for any number of things, but mostly the self-forgiveness of you being okay with yourself, that is what would create a existence of eternal terror. Because when you think about it like that, flash of your entire life flashes before you die, right before your eyes, the whole life flash. That is an eternity. For a human being, that is an eternity. So if you have experienced nothing but negativity, you have pushed through nothing but negativity, you have been evil, then in the moments when you die and you relive these things, it will be your eternity living that. That's it. That's your whole existence. Whereas if at any point you break from that and turn into a much more positive, optimistic, self-loving way of looking, then when you die, even if a portion of it is bad, everything beyond that point is an eternity of goodness and of compassion and understanding. And again, if you focus on forgiveness, then your eternity will be filled with that. Does that translate into any real world living for eternity? No, I think the concept is more psychological and that each person's eternity is very much their responsibility. But that what happens in your mind is what determines whether you live forever, again, live forever in happiness or in hate. Yep.
It's deep, man. It's complicated and simple at the same time. Because I think if you're listening in, you might have to rewind a couple times. You're really intelligent individual, man, and you're saying some things that are I think simple to understand, hard to input for some, right?
Absolutely.
Or vice versa, whatever your situation is. But I know that your thoughts are coming from experiences, your past, things you've felt, things you can probably still smell and taste, man. Like when we've experienced trauma and difficulty, we feel it for a while. Mm-hmm. And I feel what you're saying, man. I can visualize where you're getting us, the path you're taking us, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Moving forward with one of our other questions that we usually like to ask, looking back to your life and especially maybe your younger years and growing up, is there anything that you would have changed about that? Anything that you think that maybe could have put you on a different path in life that could have been different for you?
No, I don't like to play that game because I'm like any number of things could change where I am now, and I love where I'm at. Like there may be things that don't keep me 100% happy 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. I love where I'm at. I went through a great journey. I found my own happiness. Mm-hmm. And yeah, going back and changing stuff starts an avalanche that you can't necessarily control.
A butterfly effect.
Exactly.
Is that what it is? Is that what that means?
Yeah.
I've heard that before. I didn't.
Like there are things I wish were different, but the
I had a
problem with
Peter
them being
Griffin understanding of he went back. Stewie went back in time, and it was complicated. But you're right. If you lived a life with regret, I don't know if you could ever find happiness, man. But if you're just living like, yeah, I did some stuff, and that made me this person today.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Whether it was done
unfortunately,
to
I
you or
tied to the forgiveness part of it. It's
Yeah,
like I have to be able to
yeah.
forgive these things and whatnot. Do I wish some things were different? Yeah, to an extent, while knowing that any way of fulfilling that wish would probably F stuff up real bad. Could
And by
I
the
have
way,
made it through? Maybe.
but even if you could, right? Even if you had the thought, you know what? Let's go back. We can't go back in time.
Yep.
So no matter what, it's a cute way of forcing you to talk about things, and
Some of the things
we
that
like
we-
the
yeah.
question.
Well, and also I think it's a very human way of avoiding forgiving yourself. By
Yeah.
saying, would you like to change something? It's like, oh, yeah. That one's hard for me to get past in myself. And it's like, good. Then you need to take that you would change and forgive yourself. Because you feel wrong about it for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yeah. I think this is very deep. I think that's where it comes from. I think, I mean, like we've mentioned it, we talked about it in pretty much all of our podcasts. And it comes back to like, no, it's the struggles, the mistakes, the wins, everything has put us in the place that we're at. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it comes back to, if you had a mistake, you're like, oh yeah, I wish I could have changed that, but no, because I'm here. But how did you deal with it at that moment? You're not forgiving yourself, like you were mentioning. You got to forgive yourself to be able to move over it and get over that part of it. Because if not, you're at some point you're still going to be like, oh man, I wish I could have done this differently, or I wish I could have done that differently, even though you couldn't. You can't.
Well, and it's also like when people talk about like, if I had 5 more minutes to talk to this individual, I get that. But I also, this is how I live. I live differently. I live like this. We had those times. Right, we really had those times. Like right now, I can call if I'm having difficulty with my son. Let's say example. I don't, so he's a good example. But if I wanted to, I could call him and say, "Man, I'm sorry, I was not a good dad," or whatever the situation is.
Yep.
I can do that. That's privilege, man. Some people cannot. I can't call my mom, but I got to live, 50 years, almost 50 years. Knowing my mom and communicating. If I failed, let that be a lesson to me to never fail again to those I love, right? And let that be hopefully a lesson to you that if you still have the opportunity to reach out to someone and say you're sorry or tell them you love them, may you do that.
I think especially when we're talking about parents, I mean you just mentioned you lost your mom. I lost my dad a few years ago too. I was 21. 20, 24, 25, something like that. Right about to graduate college. That was just. I mean, I was a kid. I was living life. I was living college. So looking back at it, I'm like, oh, I missed a couple birthdays. I missed a couple special occasions with them or whatnot. But now that I'm looking back at it, I'm like, okay, now I'm not repeating the same mistakes that I did. Now with my mom, I try to be more intentional.
But I don't think your dad thought you missed it. I think your dad was proud of you. Like, like I'm thinking as a dad, you're like, oh, you didn't come to my birthday party because you were studying for a test, and he's bragging to his friends like, my son's in college, man. And for a lot of communities, that's a pipe dream, dude. That could never be. He's bragging about you. So I don't think parents ever live a life where like, oh, no one, my birthday, no one came by, no one called me.
Yeah, but I mean, for the kids, I think for us, we carry that like, damn, I can't be with him his next birthday, obviously.
Maybe white people are just salty, but I feel like I know a lot of people that do exactly that.
Oh, Mr. Jackson. No, I don't know. I see that.
I see a lot of that right now. Personally, I see a lot of people being angry at shit like that can be solved with communication.
Yeah, man, communication.
And I mean, maybe not that. I think that people make a big effort to go see people on their birthdays, and that kind of minimizes how the times you're talking about when everyone's like, "Oh, I'm sad, I'm alone, no one's contacting me," or those random days.
Yeah.
Those are the times that really get to people. And I think there's a lot of that happening. A lot of people being salty about that because everyone makes a big hullabaloo about coming to birthdays, this, that, and the other. And it becomes it's not as special. Because, like, on the note of yours, I believe that the human mind likes to, when looking back, take itself to the more negative memories that it has rather than the positive ones.
Yeah.
And so you remember the things with your father that maybe were a little bit more negative than you, but he would have remembered the more positive ones.
Yeah.
Just because once you get to a certain age, you do start actively remembering that because you realize that you've spent so much of your life accidentally, subconsciously focusing on the negative memories. We are at a time where we can do that before we get old. And so
you're old, man.
I did and I hit it hard.
It's important. It is.
But
When
yeah.
you start to look back, you start to reflect in. What really need to be done is reflecting on the good stuff. Committing those to memory. Because so often the bad ones get stuck because you can't get over them, because you keep thinking about them, because you wish you'd done it different, because you wish you could have said this, that, or the other, the extra 5 minutes. But if you would do that same level of picking apart the good things that go through, would be like, oh, that was fun. Oh, that was cool. Take a picture. Shoot someone a text and be like, I really enjoyed that. That will solidify those
I'll give you an
memories.
example. Just on our vacation, day one, it rained, poured. We had, and it's just right. So here's one side of the story. Here's one telling the story. That was dumb of me to take an old tent. It was inexcusable of my at the time 9-year-old son, who was scared of a spider, to get the thing, the little lighter, to try to burn the spider, putting holes in the tent that Dad forgot about. I should have checked the weather. I shouldn't have brought all of our clothes into the tent. I should have known that it was going to pour at midnight while we were asleep and rain on all of the clothes in the tent.
Nice.
Or, and that's one way. Or you could say, we're never going to stop talking about how funny it was to get poured, literally for water to be pouring into your face. Everyone was laughing, and then everyone was crying, and then everyone was laughing again. We made memories forever. And for everyone else, they're not going to get it. But for the myself and the 3 other people in that tent, it was the most memorable part of our vacation. And it was day one. The irony. And then the rest
and you stayed for the rest of the trip?
And we stayed for the rest.
Good.
And we traveled another 3,000 miles.
There are a lot of people that wouldn't have even done that.
So that's the thing. And the kids had a wonderful attitude. And the old people had a wonderful attitude. And that's how you tell the same story, just perspective.
Absolutely.
I could absolutely go and say, we're going home. I'm not going to do this. I actually have more important things to do. I can get arrogant. I can be writing emails right now. Dude, step off, man. This was their dream. And we get it. And I share that with you because it's everything else we do about life, right? And everything you've been talking about is, in fact, perspective.
Yes.
You can embrace a negative perspective on life, and you will be sour, my man. Sour. Or you can sit there and say, we're privileged to be alive.
Yeah.
What I would do for another day, well, we get another day. So then do it. You want to take care of your health? Go take care of it. Go take care of it, man.
One of the things that, especially if you're watching this on YouTube, most likely, definitely if you're in America, is that you got first world problems.
First world
You don't have third world problems. You got first world problems.
Yeah.
So be a little bit happy about that. Go drink your clean water. Even if it's from the store, eat gads. It's from the store and not the tap. That's okay. Go get your clean water that you have accessible. Go get a meal, high-calorie meal that you can have that many people around the world can't have whatsoever.
That's right, man.
And yeah, go to sleep in your bed with a roof and realize that, as you said, you're privileged.
With the nice AC in this Texas heat.
I remember when I was in
daily showers is a thing that most people take for granted. That a lot of the world right now does not get daily showers. You want to go take 2 showers a day? Oh, you do it. You just living up like a king.
Right now in Houston, after the storm, there's still tens of thousands of people without electricity in the city, right down the way from us. So, yeah, man, 100%. I remember when I was living in another country, and they said, "Is it true that in the United States you can control the weather?" And I was like, "What?" They said, "We've been told that you can control. You can make it hot or you can make it cold." And I was like, "Oh, an air conditioning heater." Mm-hmm. And I'd never thought like that we're controlling. And it's true.
Yeah.
If I want it colder right now, I'll go hit a couple buttons, tap, 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 tap,
Yup.
or warm it up or whatever I want to do. And that's not true in other parts of the world. They can't modify that.
You know they're
still
doing
water
cloud
hot.
seeding and stuff. In
Yeah,
India.
that's what I'm
Okay, I'm like,
That's
hey,
what I'm
man, we're
All of it,
And we're advanced. This is
Then what do they say that the intelligence communities are 20 years ahead of us? So
That's right.
yeah, they can.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they can.
Oh,
Let's
absolutely.
not go there.
No, we cannot. We cannot. You mentioned you listen to you mentioned music. A big used to listen to a lot of punk rock music. Is
I
that
grew
your,
up with a lot of punk rock, a lot of metal. I listen to just about everything these days, though.
yeah?
I very much.
Who's your
got
number one
out.
band? What do you listen? Who's number one on your list?
He's not gonna say
Just
Jelly Roll.
overall.
He's not gonna say Jelly Roll.
Jelly Roll, man. Jelly Roll's good. He's good, man.
It's always been Avenged Sevenfold. Ever since I was about 13 years old, Avenged Sevenfold, yeah. I mean, it's a little bit different since the Rev passed away years ago. It's still good, but oh my gosh, their earlier CDs are wildly amazing. It's always been them.
Nice, man.
Yeah. Recently, I've been listening to a lot of Dirty Hits.
Dirty Hits?
Hippie, reggae, ska,
nice.
hip hop vibes.
Nice, dude.
Yeah.
I could get into that.
Got into the whole hippie vibes in
Yeah.
Washington. There's a lot.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, man. Good for you, Washington State.
He's really
In
into
Oregon.
Jelly Roll right now, so that's why I always give him shit about
I'm
it.
really into
I enjoy Jelly
Really?
Roll.
I mean, he's not bad. He's not bad, but I think the first time we were talking about it, what did I call him? Jelly Bean. I'm like, that Jelly
He
dude.
seems like the kind of guy that would love that shit. He'd be like,
No.
hell yeah.
What I said this where I like his music. I love his perspective.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Perspective in life is different.
Oh yeah, he's a good dude. It seems like
He's a good
he
dude,
seems
yeah.
like he's got this in the right spot. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, and that's my thing, right? It's like, listen, your music is great, but there's so much great music. Okay, yeah, I love your messaging in the music. I love that you're using your art form to share a message about
Absolutely.
normal ass dudes who have struggled or made good or bad decisions. I love that perspective. I don't want just whatever all the great stuff, man. I want someone who is, and I think that's what a lot of country music does for me as well. Man, I listen to a lot of 70s and 80s country music, and they were telling unique stories about difficulties, and it's easy to make fun of them about that, but that's their thing, and it's why also when rap started, that was the story, that was the storyline. The narrative was the struggle, right? And so I connected to that early on as well. It's why a lot of rock music, man, it's hard to if you know great tunes and all this stuff, but you start listening to the words, like, oh man, that hurts, man. Yeah, it's good stuff, man, and
but it gets deep.
It gets deep, man.
A lot more metal is poetry than people really presume from the outside, but it is the metal community, such as it were, is a lot more philosophically bound than most people believe.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think it's the thing about a lot of music, but that may not sell as much as a catchy beat and then a couple of words and something dumb. But there's some poetry happening over there, and
that's not going to create a trend on TikTok.
What's that?
The
poetry?
That poetry is what creates those trends on TikToks. The punk rock, all this other kind of music with the message is not going to create your trends on TikToks, or you're not going to be played millions and millions of times on TikTok.
It's true.
And I'm becoming ever more convinced that that's because of the AI's takeover of the internet and the algorithm allowing for that to happen.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the ways the powers that be can manipulate kids is through the algorithm, through AI bots, and making whichever songs, whatever else, more accessible at will, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's a little scary.
Yeah, man, in that industry, it's tough because there's a lot of talent, but the truth of the matter is, what are you willing to do for the industry? And if you're not willing to do certain things, they can find 20 other people that'll jump in line.
Oh yeah.
And that's just true about anything, right? And so, anyways, it's not our world, luckily, but we both work in higher ed, and we're privileged because we get to engage with people who are looking to change their life using this one resource. There are many resources: entrepreneurship, your own business, the military,
Yeah.
going to a religious sect, whatever your thing is. For us, it's higher ed, and we see how it changes lives, man. So it's pretty humbling for us to be a part of that. Let me ask you this: we're closing in on our last few minutes. What legacy do you leave behind?
Probably not much of one. I, at one point in my life, was worried about that, and I was, what are people going to remember me for? What will I be to the future? And I don't care anymore because I've got some good ladies in my life, and I'm more worried about them accomplishing a legacy because I feel like to a certain extent I kind of had my chance. It came and went, and I missed out on a lot of the good, big stuff I could have done. But I am very good at helping other people get out of this terrible mindset that social media and Hollywood and all this tries to siphon everyone into so that they themselves can become their best selves. And so that's really my focus these days, and my legacy will be that by the end of this, I will have helped out a few people in an incredible way.
And that's your legacy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, giving back, teaching.
Yeah.
So you're a teacher. You're a mentor, and that's your legacy, right? And I think if you're watching, you can see that. You can see what shoots out from the screen is someone who is selfless in their approach to giving. Because you could make it all about you and say, get out of my way. I'm not done getting mine yet. But yours is, I want to uplift you.
I was selfish for a long time.
Sure, man, we are.
It's a bad loop in your brain, and it's just
it's a bad look, man.
Yeah, it's such looking at the short term gains. Like selfishness just continues to eat away at you and eat away at you and eat away at you, and it just you don't have to be selfless. You just need to stop being selfish to get that step in the right direction, feel better about yourself. And selfishness is easy.
It is.
Yeah. That's easier approach.
What happens after we die, man? What do you think happens to us? I want to know, actually. that's not a scenario. Like, no, really, what happens, man? What's next? What's after this?
I believe that when we die, our consciousness joins the ether and we get a sense of awareness that is not something we could describe because it is the same concept as the Bible. The Bible is a book made by people about a concept people are not allowed to understand to try and explain it to other people. And so you never really get to understand it because God, by definition, is beyond the capability of any human to understand. The fact that he has to be personified just to get people to connect a dot, it just, that same concept is the concept of death. Death is beyond our understanding. When we die, we, to some degree, return to the ether, but it is just a infinite perpetuation of whatever your mindset was when you existed.
That's deep.
Yeah.
Now that'll get you thinking. That'll get you thinking for sure.
I agree, man. I agree. What you got?
Well, I'm still thinking. I'm still going on that last question.
We may or may not need a drink.
I think May for sure.
We may need a drink. We might need to call my cousin Gabriel. we might need more to drink. Reem, if you're listening. What's our last question, Susan?
Bro, I'm still.
Look at the artwork.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Just
let's show it to the camera a little bit. Yeah. No, I think one of the last questions that we tend to ask in a normal funeral setting or burial service you have people getting your casket. For you at this moment in life, if it was again you had 30 days, who do you think would be those people that you would want getting your casket that last time?
It would definitely be my father, my two brothers, my cousin, and probably my best friend Emily. But she would be very distraught, and I don't know that she would agree. She would, yeah. I mean, I know she would agree, but I'm like, I don't know that I would want to put that on.
Adding more trauma on Emily.
Exactly.
So she wouldn't appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, here's the good news, man. It's not. It's just a scenario, right? For us, for you, the guest, and
as far as we know.
To be fair, and if you're listening in, you might be thinking the same thing, right? It's like it's just a scenario, but the all beginning of life ends the same way, and that is in death. And so, our goal is to get you to listen in to our different guests, unique perspectives, intellectual approaches to talking about life, death, and all those little pieces in between. We hope you know that if you have regret, you can address those. If you're struggling with mental health issues, man, there are resources available for you. If you need a friend, but by far, today's lesson, and what is a lesson for us has been a long time coming is forgiveness and what that does to the soul and to the mind and to the body. And if you're saying that death is just a perpetuation, a continuation of what we live, if you can forgive, then maybe you can rest in peace, right? Maybe we can all rest in peace. And it's that powerful. Thanks again for listening in and for joining us for another episode of our Last 30. We'll be posting this on Wednesday, every Wednesday, our weekly podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you making the drive out here.
A lot of fun.
See you guys next week. Bye.
Thank you. Seconds. Yeah.
So